Well, hello everybody, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Charlie, November Juliet 7 Victor, and today we are doing a kit build, a buildathon with Rex, Harper, and Steven. So I'm going to turn the time over them. I just want to make sure I welcome everybody in the chat, and I hope you guys really enjoy this. It's a three-part series, but we're going to let Rex go through all the details and walk you through what we're doing here. So I'll turn it over to Rex.
You're on.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Still says 9 seconds on my computer. Okay. Thank you, Red. Want to call you Red or Charlie?
Either way, it's good.
I don't know. Huh?
You can call me Red.
Okay, Red. All right. Steve's behind the computer on this end. I'm sitting here on the bench, ready to talk about the venerable Tuna Tin 2. We are, of course, hosted on my YouTube channel live, and we're on the Red Summit RF podcast channel. Hopefully, after the event, we'll get both of those streams, or will be saved on the thing, and then we'll go again on Wednesday at what time, Steve?
8 p.m.
8 p.m. Eastern. So that'd be 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock California time, and I don't know what time it is in Arizona. And then again next Sunday with a wrap up on the kit and seeing how getting everybody working and all that kind of stuff, and maybe some changes again on Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern. So that's our schedule. Trying to make sure that people are not in work when we're doing this, just barely. Okay, in most cases. All right, so tonight we're going to do, it's not a lot of build. We're going to talk about the kit itself and a little bit of the history and, why. I've got an outline of things I want to talk about. And one of the things about doing it this way is a lot of times when we're inside another venue, like when we're doing QSO today, we've only got a 2 or 3 hour window to do the whole shebang. And this time, we don't get to talk much about why we're doing it, what the kit is and how it works. By breaking it off into 3 separate sections, we can sort of concentrate on different things, and we can spend as much time as we need or our viewers need to go over the details of certain aspects. So in this case, we're going to talk about the kit itself, and why and where it comes from. Why are we still building this silly little kit? And then what you can do with it. So I think that's pretty much what I've got. Is I said on my website, it shows the objectives of each of the 3 sessions, and I think I've stated what we're going to do today. And again, I want to encourage that this is an audience participation Buildathon. Session. We're looking for questions. We want people to get educated about the kit, building, any other function. If you've got a question, make sure you get it into us, and we'll address it, because we have the time to do that. We're not going to build a big thing tonight. We're not in a hurry to do anything. And we do have some building to do at the end, but it's relatively simple, and it's something that it's not imperative that we do it in time, on time, in sync with everybody, as long as you know how to do it. So, and unfortunately, I am remote from my house now. I can't really get much in the way of documentation up on the website. There was a couple of things that we did. I'm going to show them here as we're talking along, and then they'll get posted back to the website tonight. So, if you don't feel as though that you have to build something, you don't have to build anything. You don't have to build a darn thing. Okay. We're here for informational stuff, and you can build it later on as time goes by with the video. Okay. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is first of all, how many people do we have queued in? Just out of curiosity. Do we know?
10 and 20.
We got about 20 people.
30.
That show of hands of people people who are not experienced builders. Is there anybody who is a newbie, what we call a newbie, someone with I want to know how to address my talk. You know, if we're all experienced builders, that's one thing. But if we've got some people who are just starting out, that sort of skews my talk a little bit one way or the other.
Yeah. So
there's going to be a delay in it. Go ahead, Charlie. Sorry.
Yeah, in the comments, you guys are listening right now. If you could please just post if you are a inexperienced builder, you're not that great, you don't feel like, or you need a little extra help, post in there in the comments so we know. And then, of course,
Right.
if you are an experienced builder, we'd like to hear from you too. So go ahead.
Yeah,
And
I mean, what I'm trying to do is find the gauge how fast I can go and what I need to talk about. Okay, so we got 30 people logged in so far. Okay, which I guess is okay. I mean, I invited people who don't even have a kit. I mean, this is not something where you had to buy something to participate. So we're open. That's why I'm saying I don't really know if we've got any real new people in there.
Yeah, we do. So just going back real quick, Rich, not experienced. And then Reed Johnston, I'm not that great. And then a guy named Just Me, I have built some and built this kit a couple of days ago. Errol says some experience.
Yeah, you couldn't wait for us.
Yeah, he couldn't. Yeah, Jan says he's very experienced. Oz says fairly experienced. He's been waiting for this kit, so he still doesn't have it.
And who is that again?
Oz. OZ. I'm not quite sure. It's just what his name is on the
moniker. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know Oz.
He must be a wizard.
Okay. Well. All right. Well, one of the things I guess I'll just go slow, and if you've got questions or if you got answers, I don't care. Make sure you feedback to us so we know how to take this. I'm going to start off with a little bit of personal history on me and why I'm into QRP, and I think why a lot of people are into QRP, because you can build something in a quick amount of time without spending a lot of money, and it works, and you get to play with it. I've been a not a full-time engineer because I'm retired now, sort of. But I was an electrical engineer and did a lot of big jobs in my career where you'd work, weeks, months on a project. Sometimes I worked an entire year on a project, and after a while, it gets pretty darn boring. Never finishing the job. And when I went home to build something, I liked building small things, short, quick things that I could get done in a night or two. But I wasn't a ham. I wasn't a ham until I almost retired from being an engineer, so to speak. But still, I mean, when I built something on my bench, it was little projects. But then the projects got bigger and bigger. Like, for instance, when I became a ham, I built a house. Well, so you got building a house during the day. And if you sit down and want to relax, you don't build something huge. You build something small just so that you can, decompress. So the idea about QRP has, that 5-watt limit. I mean, it's not a Goldilocks kind of a thing, but it's just what people settled on years ago. And you can still work the world with 5 watts, but 5 watts is relatively simple. You don't have to have a lot of complicated circuitry to come up with something that produces 5 watts. And there was a lot of people who bought into that. And that was back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I mean, when this 5-watt business kind of started, and it became sort of a de facto standard. And there's a lot of clubs. And I got into it because I'm out in the sticks. My nearest ham friend is Steve. and he's 20 miles from my house. But and the club is another 30 miles. So, I mean, you got to drive an entire hour just to get to a club meeting. So I tried gathering people in Limerick, and I got one guy. There's 18 hams in town. I got one guy who wanted to actually talk to me. And he was at the time 94 years old. Didn't know anything about QRP, but that's okay. We could talk and have a good time. So, but the thing is, the camaraderie, I think, in QRP is very interesting. I've met some, I've been doing QRP for 25 years. And I met some really, really nice people, some really strong people in the way of building skills, and the knowledge of radio. I mean, I wasn't a radio person at all. I was a computer guy. I spent pretty much my entire career doing mini computer and microcomputer and microcontroller projects for products. I was a product designer. So, I wasn't really into RF at all. In fact, RF was the bane of our existence. We didn't like RF coming into our circuits at all. It was crazy. And we couldn't let our circuits generate RF because the FCC would have a real problem with that. Anyway, so when I semi-retired and started doing this QRP stuff, I had to learn about RF pretty fast. But it's interesting. And QRP, it's not all that complicated. So that's the nice thing. Everything you build that's QRP is a good learning tool because you can follow that circuit. The simplicity of it allows you to create, a knowledge base. The other thing is, I sort of retired at the same time that my wife had our first child, our first and only child. So, and I was building a house at the same time. So there was a lot of things in my life, and I became a ham then. And I didn't have a lot of money to go spend on radios. I got flea market specials, $35 for a transceiver. Okay, I'm in. But the idea of QRP, I mean, it doesn't break anybody's budget, and it's pretty simple, and that's what I like about it. There is a part of the learning process is be tapped into other groups and QRP people, and I tapped into QRP ARCI, the International Amateur Radio Club QRP version. They have their little meeting out in Dayton every year, the 4 days in May. And I went to, I think I went to the very first organized one. There was one that was unorganized, and I think it was 94 or 95, I think it was. And then they organized it as a real event. And I remember it was in the Days Inn in Miamisburg, Ohio. And I went out there, I didn't know anybody. And I had one stupid little thing I had created. And I set up my little table and I sold a bunch of little boards. And it was amazing. I mean, there were some really great people from all over the world there. And I met a lot of people and, really put my foot into the water in learning this hobby. And I remember going to 4 days in May, or actually going not to 4 days in May in particular, but going to the convention, the Dayton Ham Convention. And I remember the booth where Doug DeMaw, there was two what I would call granddaddies of QRP, Doug DeMaw and Lou McCoy. And I remember going to the Doug DeMaw and buying a book, and I was like, just enamored, and I didn't know what to say. And then I didn't even think I got it autographed. I should have, because he was right there. He should have autographed it. But I mean, meeting people like that were amazing. But then the QRP aspect of it, when I started going to the QRP conventions, I mean, I met George Dobbs, who became a very good friend, and the boys from England were all amazing people, and I consider them friends for 25 years. But I've got QRP friends from all over the country. It really is amazing, and the information flow between QRP builders is just amazing. And the big thing is, if you want to create something or you want to build something, there is a ton of stuff out there. If you're a newbie, I recommend, I don't have anything I can show for it, but I recommend joining the QRP ARCI, the International QRP Club, and or foremost, the British QRP Club, the GQRP Club. That club is gauged, I think, more towards builders and operators, but builders essentially, and they, for, I don't know what it is, $20, I think, for membership. Go over the GQRP Club. This is the shill. I'm shilling now for the QRP ARCI the International Club and the British QRP Club. Look for a membership. See how much it is for Americans to become a member. I think it's $20.
And while you're doing that, let me just mention to you, Steve, that you can do. I don't know which way you prefer, but let me just demonstrate. You can go ahead and just share a screen like this. We can bring up the whole screen here if you want. That's up to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Is there a membership there?
You want me to do it, or do you want? Is it the GQRP or is it the QRP?
Yeah, GQRP is what we're looking for.
Oh, okay.
Just for the heck of it.
GQRP.
I don't know where the membership is. We're taking our time here. This is very important. This is very important because if you're starting out, even if you're experienced, if you're not a member of a club that's getting information coming into your mailbox, you're losing out. You're losing out big time.
Okay, so what's up, Rex?
Okay, I can't see it. I can see it on my website, but I can't read it because it's so small that my glasses, I can't read at that distance.
So
on the screen, don't worry.
Yeah, okay. United States of America is $20.
$20. Okay, $20, and you get 4 magazines, quarterly magazines, and they're just amazingly full of circuits and history and descriptions of how things work and how to make your own stuff. Okay, now I'm into stuff, making your own stuff, big time. But also, one of the things that's a benefit is, okay, if you remember ARRL, if you want to get back issues of the magazine, they sold them on CD, 10 years at a pop. The GQRP Club has something called their Sprat on a stick. You can get a thumb drive with every single magazine for the last 50 years. It's like 200 magazines from time 0 to time last year, and it's $6. It's just, and if you go plumbing into that, you plug that sucker into your computer and you start saying, well, I want to build an antenna, and you go and search for antenna, models and all that kind of stuff, you're going to be lost forever. But the whole point of that is the fact that when you go back to day 0, you go back to the very simple circuits that are easy to understand, easy to build, because that's where everybody started way back.
And they still work.
And they still work.
It's not like the software updates have done away with it or something.
It's not like an 80-meter antenna from 1980 won't work today. I mean, it will work. And sometimes those were much simpler days, and they weren't all that complex. I mean, everybody talks about a loop antenna now, and you got, a tuned loop antenna, which everybody's talking about. Everybody loves them. But they're also exceedingly difficult to make and tune, and they're expensive to buy. But you can go back in history, you can find some of the early stuff like that, and you get a Moxon loop or something. You can build that stuff, and it costs nothing. And that's how I got into the hobby. I found that club, and I got the magazine, and said, "Geez, you can build these little circuits that $10, $15 worth of parts. A little bit of time, you can build something." And I started creating tools for allow people to build these circuits freehand without buying a circuit board and all that kind of jazz. So that's very interesting. In the case of the Tuna Tin 2, that came out in 1976. Let's go back to the schematic, the first, or the built one. That came out in May of 1976. I wasn't even a ham. I missed out on that, but I was a collector when I became a ham in 95. I started collecting magazines, and I knew QRP, so I started looking for any magazine that had QRP content in it, which was an ARRL standards wasn't that often, except for when Dr. Ma was in the lab, because he was a QRP guy, and so he had all kinds of little things in the magazine, but they don't have a QRP content in particular. there's no QRP column in QST, but there is one in CQ. There was one, there was 73 magazine had QRP content, which of course is gone now. There was Ham Radio magazine. There was, I'm trying to think of the other one. CQ magazine had a QRP column in every month. So I collected all those magazines, and one of them was the Tuna Tin 2 issue, the May 1976 issue of QST, where the Tuna Tin 2 was the cover article. And I saw it and I said, this is great, you know, but and I actually have a Tuna Tin 2 that was built in 1976, not by me, but by somebody else. Okay, in a box. It wasn't in a tuna can. It was in a rectangular box. It's still on my shelf of stuff that's very interesting. But anyway, I was not into the Tuna Tin 2. I was into all kinds of other things, and mostly scratch building stuff until I guess it was about 2001 that I was standing at 4 Days in May in the hallway, and the current guy who was kidding the Tuna Tin 2 NorCal version, well, there's an original up there, isn't there? Okay, I'm looking at the pictures that Steve is scanning up there. I can't quite see some of them, but there it looks like an original one up there on the left. Anyway, wait, what's that? Oh, I was standing in the hallway of the 4 Days of May hotel when Jay Bromley, who was kidding the Tuna Tin 2 NorCal version, which was a revamped version of the Tuna Tin 2, he said, "I'm sick and tired of kidding this thing, and I'll give it back to Doug Hendricks, which had designed had the design done for NorCal." And I was standing right there, and I was doing, at the time, I was creating something called LobsterCon, which was a camping weekend. And I said, well, I wouldn't mind kidding the Tuna Tin 2 and use the funds to help offset LobsterCon. And so all of a sudden, the Tuna Tin 2 NorCal version ended up in my lap. And I was kidding them for a couple of years. But I had always had this inkling in the back of my head about doing something a little bit different. And I had always been something of a fan of the sardine sender, which was I believe an 80-meter transmitter, because I grew up on the ocean and I had a collection of sardine cans that washed up on the beach that were empty. So I always thought about, well, I had all these cans, but if I could put the parts inside the can, that would be pretty cool. And I worked on that for years, trying to come up with a way of creating the sardine sender in a sardine can from Maine. And I finally figured out how to do that. But by that time, I now was kidding the Tuna Tin 2, and it became a lot easier to create the Tuna Tin 2 in a can, because the guy who had all the canning machines in the world that were surplus in the state of Maine, he would not sell me a sardine canning machine, because he wanted to sell them for like $15,000, and they weighed about 3 tons. But he did have a spare round canning machine, and he would sell me that one for only $2,500, and it only weighed half a ton. so I bought that and became I started kidding the Tuna Tin 2 inside a tuna fish can, which was very interesting, and people thought it was hilarious. And I sold a lot of them over the years, and I still sell them. So I started off with the Tuna Tin 2, and then I started creating all that. My goal at the time was to design an entire station that fits inside tuna fish cans. And if you go to my website, you'll see I got lots of tuna fish can kits. I have other kits, but I have tuna can kits because I just kind of like the idea. So anyway, that's how I got into it, and I still love them, and I still think they're kind of cool. And the 40th anniversary, I designed, obviously, in 2016 for the 40th anniversary of the the May 76 article. Previously, I had a 35th anniversary version I did earlier before that, but this particular one I want to talk about is that if you look at the construction up above, okay, in the picture on the thing, now flash to the layout of the board, which was there's the layout of the board, and okay, so there's how the parts are all laid out. Now go to the schematic. And it might be kind of hard to tell from this, but if you look at the schematic and the flow of the parts and where the parts are placed, and then flip quickly to the layout, okay, the parts and the flow and the layout and the schematic coincide with each other. It's laid out exactly the way the schematic is laid out. I mean, yeah, the antenna and the receiver things are at an angle, but if you look at it, the overall flow. So for a beginner to work through the circuit,
Power's here.
yeah, but you look, it goes down,
So
it goes
the
across
key,
to the key,
yeah.
then it goes down to the oscillator and the crystal. So you can take the schematic and look at the built circuit, and you go one for one. You can check all the parts, and you can actually debug the circuit by going through the whole thing. Just the way it looks on the board is exactly the way it looks on the schematic. So it's pretty easy to debug and figure out what's going on, which is why I chose it for this kind of a Buildathon. So be that as it may, let's go to the schematic.
Hang on a second.
That's kind of the history of why in the heck it's any questions, any comments? Have I bored anybody to tears yet?
Yeah, so go ahead and leave in the chat your comments.
Yeah.
There were a few other comments as you were talking that came up.
Okay.
But nothing that, I mean, too,
All right.
just me says QRP is all I do these days, QRP/CW. And then Davey KU9L says it was a great kit for the first timers, and this old timer threw it together in less than 4 hours, taking my time, worked first try, 300 milliwatts output.
Who was that anyway?
His name, it's KU9L, so his name's Davey.
Oh, David Knapp, I think. KU9L.
Possibly.
Is that David Knapp?
No.
Again, okay.
Yep,
All right.
we've got the schematic up.
Okay, we got the schematic up. So pardon me while I get my copy of the schematic, so I don't have to keep looking at that screen far, far away. Okay. So I got my copy of the schematic, and so let's talk about the parts and why they're there and what they do. Okay, because that's part of the education about this whole circuit and how you can make it different, do something a little bit different. So in the case of the original Tuna Tin 2, it's sort of, I mean, this 40th anniversary it's in honor of the original kit, and I tried not to do a lot of changes to it. And one of them is that the original Tuna Tin 2 used RCA connectors as jacks. Okay, and I've done that ever since. The original Tuna Tin 2, when I started kitting the revamped, or what they call the Back to the Future version, which is the NorCal version, also had bulkhead RCA jacks. And I distinctly remember that when you built the kit, you could probably build the board in an hour or two. But then when you went to put it in on the tuna fish can, it would take you about 4 or 5 hours to get that done. It was absolutely crazy. Even for an experienced builder, I used to swear at the connectors, mounting these bulkhead connectors down inside the tuna fish can and then wiring to them and wiring the interconnect to them. It was just awful. And so when I made the anniversary versions, when I made my versions, I moved the bulkhead connectors up to the circuit board so that you solder them to the circuit board and you don't have to do any wiring. And so, yeah, you can see all those parts on that board are all sitting on top. They're all connected to the board. So The only wiring you got to do is bring some power in and then, hook up an antenna and the receiver and the key. Very, very simple. And it made making the kit and getting it to work a breeze. Now you see there's a hole right in the center of the board. And when you go out and buy any small, I think it's 4, 5, or 6 ounce food, cat food. I don't like cat food because it stinks when you can never clean the can out, but pineapple cans work really nice. Dole pineapple cans, a little bit taller, nice and rugged, but all you got to do to mount this thing on the tuna can is to drill a hole in the bottom of the can and use the stove bolt to pinch the board on top. If you have the pull-out lid, the Ethiopian lid, because it leaves a little ridge around, a little ring around the top, and the board sits on there very nicely. Put the stove bolt in, and you're done. So mounting it in a can takes about 2 minutes, as opposed to 6 hours from before. Okay, so let's talk about, sometimes a lot of people don't like RCA for power jacks, power connections, because you have a tendency you can actually, make a poor connection, or you can, you got that center prong from the RCA sticking out with 12 on it. You can, you short it out pretty easy. So yeah. So that's one thing, you make your connections with the power off. But you can see that on this one, I have an alternate power. You can actually, you can see, yeah, there's on the built one, there's a 2-pin. Hey, look at that. That wasn't there before. Yeah, you can just bring in a wire and screw it down. So
Will it work at 9 volts?
It will work on 9 volts. Of course, it won't put out that much power, put out a little bit less power, but it will work at 9 volts. So that comes in, and the next thing is that didn't exist on a Tuna Tin on the schematic, if you look up, is a D1 4N5818 diode. And that diode is there so that you can't hook up the power backwards. And a lot of times people would, hook their wires up, if they got their cheap Chinese cables or something, and they're reverse oriented. And I bought 500 9-volt battery snaps off of eBay. And guess what? Red was minus, black was plus. But if you put them on one of these things, it just wouldn't work, because that diode would protect it from putting reverse polarity to the rest of the circuit. So that's very important. Now, if you want the maximum amount of RF out of this thing, you can bypass that diode and pick up another 3/4 of a volt of RF power. So anyway, that's what, when you see the diode sitting there and it's a 5818, that's a low voltage drop Schottky diode. So there's a half a volt drop across it, but it protects your rest of the circuit from hooking something up backwards. So we come down now to these jumper as needed. Okay. The thing about Tuna Tin 2 is if you're using it with a key that you already have, you might have a mono key, you might have a stereo key. If you want to prefer using let's say a stereo key, because it is a stereo jack there. Okay, so it's got both left and right audio circuits coming in from your stereo. If you want a particular one, tip or ring, to be your because your key might be wired differently, but if you want to you want to transmit with a straight key using your dot or your dash paddle, you can select either one of those with the tip or the ring jumper. If you don't care, you can put both of them on there, and either way will work. So your lever will actually work both ways, doing dots and dashes. It won't be it won't be a dot and won't be a dash. It'll just be a connection. So that's just a way of being to configure the stereo jack to be either specific to one side or not. So now that comes in, and you can see across the top of this schematic. Yeah, get rid of that whole diode there. Yeah, okay. You see right there is keyed 12 volts. Big as you please. There it is written. So in other words, the kit only gets power when the key is closed and allows power to come in from the jack. So when power is off, you have no oscillation, nothing happens. When the power comes on, then the whole top of this circuit gets lit up with 12 volts or 9 volts or whatever you're keying in from the power jack, and now this thing becomes active. One of the things about the keyed power rigs, these simple little rigs, is they do have a tendency to chirp because the power's coming up as you've got this thing keyed. So a lot of times there is a little chirpy action to it, a little warble, but it's no big deal. We put up with that because it's simple and it's cheap. So coming around the top, you see the first thing you see is C2 as a 0.1 microfarad capacitor. That 0.1, if you go to your impedance calculations, a 0.1 microfarad capacitor at 7 megahertz, which is 40 meters. I'm going to look at my little thing right here just to make sure I know exactly what I'm saying. A 0.1 at 40 meters is equivalent to about 0.22 ohms. Okay, now that's 0.22 ohms at 7 megahertz. It's how many ohms at DC? It's infinite. Okay, so in other words, DC doesn't go down through there, but any RF that's sitting on that line sees a short circuit to ground. So that means that helps kill all the RF that sits on 12 volts, which is coming in from the back end of the circuit. Okay, so, and that's down here at the oscillator in the final, there might be some noise there and it might jump onto that 12 volt line, but if it does, there's C2 shorting it down. There's another one at C8.
I just saw C8.
C8 right there,
There's
right?
C8.
Yeah, just to the left of the inductor.
Yep.
Both of those guys are shorting RF to ground on either end of that line.
There's a question in the chat.
C8 and C2. Okay, both of those capacitors are 0.22 ohms to ground at 7 megahertz. So both ends of that line are being shorted to ground for any RF that's up on that 12 volt line. So it is basically pure DC, or relatively pure DC. Okay, so that's what happens there. And so let's take a look. I'm trying to go through the circuit here, so I'm gonna.
So Rex, there's a question in chat about that.
Question.
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, yeah, you can go ahead, Steve.
Would a different value cap help the chirp?
Well, I mean, the bigger the cap, that is a hard question. It might help the chirp somewhat, but I think anything that happens there, the RF, it's
More difficult question than we can go into.
Well,
maybe.
There is a way. Now, what you really want is you want the power to come up exponentially. Okay, but that means you got to have a much bigger cap. Okay, to get that RC time constant to come up, and the problem with that is that it would really cut down on how this circuit operates, but I don't think that's the real problem. The real problem is that as the power is coming up, and these two caps have got to charge up. Okay, as that thing is coming up, this thing starts oscillating at a low voltage as it comes up. As the voltage rises, it is oscillating, and I think the real problem is that rising voltage does have a tendency to change the operating frequency of the crystal. So that's why the crystal comes up and it's operating at different frequencies. So it takes up a wider spectrum. Okay. So just changing that particular those capacitors, I think probably even might affect it poorly. I don't think changing that crystal. Now, again, I'm a computer guy. Okay. But I happen to know that the whole idea about turning an oscillator on and off is primarily the rise and fall of that on-off cycle, and the oscillator operating has a tendency to make it operate through more frequencies than not. Okay, so, and that's what takes up the spectrum on the thing that where you hear that chirpy action, because it, the change of the frequency is going up. So as you whoop, you hear that. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to cut it off after. I think the problem is it should be down at the final that you cut that thing down, not at the power. Okay. Because what you try to do is you try to change the keying envelope more than you're changing the power.
So I changed the overhead to show what you're looking at. Don't move it around.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
But if you point at it, folks on the stream, let me know if that's better or if I should switch back to the other view that I had a minute ago. This might look a little fuzzier. That's why I say that.
Okay.
But it might help because you're pointing at it rather than me trying to interpret the pointing.
All right. So we talked about C2 and C8. What they're doing there is they're shunting RF to ground. Over here, R2 and R1, what are they doing? And if you look at them, obviously they're going from 12 volts to ground. So that's a voltage divider. And now those are resistors, which have no real inductance on frequency base. So this is frequency independent. So this, and you look at R1 is 4.7, you look at R2 is 47. So it's a 10 to 1. So that means that as a voltage divider, R1, the voltage on the top right here that goes into the base of the transistor, is 1/11 of 12 volts, which is basically 1 volt. Okay. And if you look over here at the little number by the base of the transistor, you see 1.0. That's the DC bias of that transistor. And you look underneath it, there's another number in parentheses. That's the RF value. Okay, we won't talk about that right now. but that biases that transistor at roughly 1 volt. And if you go down and you look at the emitter of this thing, a base emitter junction is about 0.7 of a volt, which means that down here at the emitter is about 0.36 volts. Okay, you can see that, which means that over here there's a certain amount of current going through this 220 ohm resistor, and the idea is you're trying to adjust that resistance value so you're not pulling a ton of current through the transistor. You don't want to blow the transistor up. You want it to operate very nicely at a very comfortable point. And you see C3 is another 0.1 right next to it. So that means that RF wise is a 0.22 ohms shorting the emitter to ground. So no RF voltage can really happen at the emitter. It's shunted. It's like a short circuit. So that means that if you look at the collector, it's got this circuit going up to the switch 12 volts, and you got the inductor L1, which is a piece of wire in a coil. DC comes through it, correct? Okay. So it's got a very low DC value hooked up to 100 ohms. So now that circuit right there is almost a direct feed into the collector. So there's where the 11.6 is. And you've got a crystal going from the collector to the base. That's the feedback that takes part of that signal from the collector, the RF that's there, and runs it out of phase. The crystal is a phase element that changes the phase, so it brings it back to the base input of the collector, the transistor, and so it gets amplified again. So what happens is that whole thing becomes an in-phase feedback. So that's what causes this transistor to oscillate. And if you look at the little voltages on the output of the collector, that's what these little numbers are here. You'll see that the DC value of that collector, because it's a pretty short circuit through L1 and 100 ohms to 12 volts, it's pretty close to the switch voltage, but the 4.0 volts underneath it, that's the RF that's being generated. That's an RF waveform that's sitting there at that collector. And you can feed that through C6 into another voltage divider. And that is a DC voltage divider setting the bias point at the final transistor. And you look at it, it says that's at 1.2 volts. And you can look at 8.2 and 1K. So you got 1K over 9. So that's 1/9 of 12 volts. So it's 1.2. So you brought it up a little bit from the first one. Okay. But you've got a pretty good RF waveform coming over here into the base of that guy to amplify. This one wants a little bit more current, a little bit more room to operate. So the collector again has got a
10 microhenry.
10 microhenry.
Yep.
Okay, which is 10 microhenries at 7 megahertz. That's roughly a 440 ohm impedance
Yeah.
at 7 megahertz. So that is on the 12 volt side. So it's basically dropping 400 ohms right there. So that drops the voltage down to give you 11.7 and enough room to generate your RF signal. And that, of course, is coupled again by a 0.1, which is a short circuit at 7 megahertz going out to your low pass filter. And now this, we're not going to go into that because that's a whole can of worms doing low pass filters. But most of these low pass filters, you can look in a book of tables and find the values of any low pass filter you want to build.
Yeah, you just look up and say, okay, use these.
Okay, use these values. These were optimized. Chuck Carpenter did all the optimization on this thing to give this the maximum amount of oomph out, and that's a technical term, oomph. Okay, to get as much power out of that as you possibly can, and also to match the impedance as best you can as the output impedance of this transistor. Down here on the emitter, you can see there's a 56 ohm, so it's running a lot hotter than the 220 ohms over here. So this allows more current to go through here because less resistance, which gives this thing more power out. And of course, then that finally goes out to a switch to go out either to your antenna or to your receiver. Now, when the switch is on the receive mode, the antenna comes in, nothing from this guy comes out, and it goes right back to the receiver. So the antenna goes to the receiver when it's on receive. When it's on transmit, the output of this goes to the antenna, and the receiver gets nothing. And I mean, you can't get too much simpler than that, except for maybe a one transistor transmitter. So that's all there is to building this thing. Now, historically, this was the Tuna Tin 2, but I'm going to take this away. And I'm going to bring out another schematic. This is the first one I started kidding. I started kidding the original 40-meter version of the NorCal, which, well, okay, hold on a second. Okay, I'm looking this way or that way.
There you go.
That way.
Yep.
Okay. The original Tuna Tin 2 was by Doug DeMaw. The NorCal version was done by Doug Hendricks and Dave Meacham, I believe. And then when I got my, whoa, hold on. Okay.
Oh, I turned it the wrong way.
You turned it the wrong way. There it is. Okay.
Slide. There you go. Okay. Good.
We just lost our close-up camera.
It's okay. We don't need it yet.
Pardon the fumbling here. Okay. So I'm making that so people don't get cockeyed. There you go. I'm looking at it now. Okay. So this is when I started kidding these things, when I stopped kidding the NorCal version and came up with my own version inside a tuna fish can.
This one is not online though.
This schematic is not online.
Yeah.
Okay. I stopped making these a while back, but I probably should put this in, and I will. I'll add this to the data for it. So in case you're interested,
okay.
Because when I started kitting them inside tuna fish cans, I didn't want to stay on 40. I thought, well, let's go other places. So we this is Chuck Carpenter and I. We tuned that circuit.
And this one's coming across a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy because it's a poor copy of the schematic. But what we have is we have bands 80, 40, 30, and 20. And so I kitted these things with different parts so that you could actually take the Tuna Tin tube and put it on 20 meters. And I mean, it's cool. And you see the big thing you change in the frequency table, which you can't see because it's too damn fuzzy. Okay, sorry about that. I'll put this online so you can see it when I get home. But C2, in this case, C2 is...
And you can't, somebody asked if you can install the switch backwards.
The switch backwards? No, not that one, because that's a single pole double throw.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't matter which way you put it in.
No, it's marked on the board which way you throw it.
Yep.
Okay, but it doesn't matter which way it is
installed.
Okay, but here over here, this C4 is 100 picofarad right here on the 40th anniversary. Well, that is the same as this C2 right here. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you notice that over here, if you change C2 from 220 to 100, there's the 100, which is the same as on the 40th anniversary, to 68 to 47. That changes the amount of signal going this way. Okay. And that's frequency dependent because you're trying to keep that level pretty much the same over the course of the bands. So by changing that value, it because it's again frequency dependent, it basically keeps the same impedance going to the output transistor.
Is that same 12 volt keyed? No.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, see, here's the keying circuit. Okay, and this is the 2 tin tuners with a third transistor over here is the keying transistor, and that basically keys.
There's the 12
up to the switch. I'm sorry, this is switch 12 volts right here.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but what happens is this is the signal line going over to the final. And that C2, by changing that value, you create about the same amount of signal going to the right based on the band. So you can go from 220 to 100 to 68 to 47. And now that changes the value going to the left. And all you got to do is change the low pass filter in the crystal. And you can see here's the low pass crystal values for 80, 40, 30, 20 for this particular setup. Okay. And that's it. So you can actually move this circuit pretty simply. You can move it to, if you happen to like 20 meters instead, by changing that value down to 47 picofarad and putting in a 20 meter crystal, you can get 20 meter out. But of course, you got to change the low pass filter. I kitted these inside cans, and of course now each set of components is different for the different bands, and I had cans up on my shelf for 80, 40, 30, 20. I never sold 80s, and I hardly ever sold 30s and maybe some 20s, and I always ended up with a lot of cans up there that were not selling. So I just stopped doing the other versions, and I made it an 80 version only for the Tuna Tin 2. And then I created the Super Tuna, which has more power, more output, and has band modules.
Yep.
So I started going to band modules. So we'll get out of that. Okay.
So we're going to move on to our next phase, or what?
Okay. So I mean, I think we beat that circuit into the ground, but just to show you that I calculated some values of 0.1 microfarad. This is at 40 meters now at 7 megahertz. Okay, a 0.1 microfarad cap has 0.22 ohms of RF impedance. Okay.
Oh, do you want me to show that?
Well, you could.
Okay. Hang on a second. Let me stop that. Let me bring that up. That was the
that was
what did you call that one? That was
RF calc.
Frequency calc.
The
frequency component stuff. Okay. Hang on.
Yeah, we'll bring that one right up so you can actually see it.
Yep.
In all its glory.
There.
Okay. So So looking at that, you can see at 40 meters, a 0.1 microfarad has about 0.22 ohms of RF impedance. 100 picofarad has 227 ohms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Down there in Lulu. Okay, and a 220. These are the parts on the Tuna Tin 2 40th anniversary that change impedance with frequency that you see in the circuit. So you got the 0.1s, which are RF shorting. They're 0.22 ohm shorts to ground. You got the 100 picofarad over at the output of the oscillator. That's roughly 227 ohms. And then you got a 220 that passes from the oscillator to the final. That's about 100 ohms. You got a 10 microhenry inductor, which is about 440 ohms, and a 22, which is 968. So if you look at taking these values, you can actually plunk them into the RF section, and you can look at what the RF voltage dividers are, and that tells you how the signal is being shaped or split to go from one stage to the next. That's what they do. They basically, and you can scale this kit by scaling those values. Anyway, and I won't go into that whole thing, but we beat that one to the death. Now, any other questions about that? I hope not.
Well, let's just. It takes a minute for people to catch up on chat.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're in a pausing session before I go to the next.
Yeah. So if there's any other questions for Rex, go ahead and pop those in chat. We'll make sure we get them.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna get.
I might as well right now. Also, we got a little donation from Richie's Radio Room for $3, which is very nice of him to just donate that money. So I'll send it onto you, Rex.
Okay, I won't be sitting at the edge of my seat waiting for it, but that's okay. I'm fine. Okay. All right. So, I mean, I think the whole important part of that whole talk was the fact that is the 40th anniversary. I specifically kitted at 40 meters, but it's pretty simple to change a couple of values, and you can put it anywhere you want it if you understand how to do the scaling. And I'll put those scaling documents up, so I'll show you what it takes to move that to other bands. Because that was the one nice thing about the Tuna Tin. It was so generic that it was easy to move to other places. You didn't have to, it wasn't something you had to figure out how to change a whole bunch of stuff to get it from 80 to 40 to 30 to 20, which is why I stumbled upon it and I really liked it.
So Rex, what do most people build then, do you think?
I mean, most of the time I'm seeing for all my kits, I see either 40 or 20.
Yeah.
I don't see much 80 meter action, and I don't see much 30 meter action. Although 30 meters is a nice little place where, your 5-watt signal is kind of, even with, what is it, the max on that is 100? Is it a max on 30 meter 100 or 200? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, it's relatively small, so your 5-watt pipsqueak signal doesn't get overrun by kilowatt stations. I know that, and there's no contesting, so that's another aspect of 30 meters. So I sell some, but again, this one I pretty much stuck at 40 meters, and that's it. So, all right, so now we can go to how to build this thing. Now, somebody just commented it took him, he went slow and dedicated, and he built it in 4 hours. So it shouldn't take you any longer than that for sure. So I am going to, this is the kit as the 40th anniversary is. So there it all is. And I'll tell you some experiences about when I do Buildathons. And I see guys at a Buildathon and have a whole bunch of parts like that. But wait a minute. I mean,
Yep.
There they go.
No, up, not down.
Oh,
There.
okay. So they will drop all the parts out of the kit like that, and they got a board, okay, and then they'll start building. And how they start building, I don't know, okay, because everybody's got their own little technique. So they could either be the time delay here, I guess. I'm looking at okay, all right. Got a time delay from when I'm looking at the wrong camera. So what they'll do is they'll start building this kit, and they'll scrounge around and say, okay, I'm gonna 1 in 58, 18 diode. And they go like this, and they hunt and peck around until they find it. And I'll tell you right now, that will take you 5, 6, 8, 10. I don't know. It'll take you a lot longer to build this kit when you don't sit there and organize your parts. And because the first time okay, there it is. I've got this thing, and I'm gonna work it. I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna solder it up, and then they have to find the next thing, and they got to sort through all these parts again, and that's just plain crazy. I mean, I don't like to waste time. I like if I'm gonna build this thing, I want to build it, and I want to play with it. So the first thing you really should do is organize your parts, and that just means, I mean, the first thing you do is you can put stuff. You can put stuff that's easily recognizable that you don't have to worry about sorting. I mean, hey, there's only one crystal in there, and there's 3 RCA jacks. You can put all that stuff aside because you don't need to worry about the values or anything. You just pick it up because it's in a pile. Okay. Now you got this sort of part. So then what you can do is you can pull out the stuff you recognize. There's a transistor, and there's another transistor. And there's only 2 transistors in this circuit, and they're both 2222, so you can put them aside. And there's another green guy. A lot of chokes have got.
Put those up by the transistors so we can
Whoa.
see them.
Okay, I'm off the screen.
Okay,
Whoops! I just trampled over my transistors. Okay, all right. Okay, and there's
I'm working
all.
to keep you on the screen.
Yeah, he's working to keep me on the screen, and I
You're working to get off
with my goggles on. It's hard for me to keep focused on what I'm doing and looking at the screen to make sure I haven't wandered off. So what you can do is you can take and look at various values, various parts, and you can pull them apart very quickly. So here's another capacitor. Here's another capacitor. Another capacitor. There's 2. Another one.
Oh, those are going off the edge.
Oh, they're going off the edge.
Yeah, I can. There we go.
Maybe am I going too high up?
No, you're just going off the edge.
Oh,
We're
okay.
zoomed in pretty far here.
All right, we're zoomed in pretty. I'll have to make this
the close-up shot.
I'll have to make this tighter. Okay, here's another capacitor over there. Okay, and then we got the diode. Okay, this might not be a real close-up shot then. So there is. I've taken that thing and I pull it all apart, so at least I know where everything is. And now we weren't designed to build this thing today. Okay. I'm just trying to show you how, when you go to build it, you can make your life much easier. And so the first thing you do is let's take these capacitors, and I look at this thing, and I'm going to go look at this side, and it says, guess what? I cannot read that. So it's always handy to have. I'm 70, going to be 74 shortly. And I don't read those little teeny numbers as well as I used to, but I can see that says K5K. What the hell's that? K5K is written on there. Well, if you turn it over and you look at it, it says 104. K5K is the description of voltage. The 5 stands for 50 volts. K is the temperature, and another K is, it's basically precision, temperature, voltage, and whatever. So that's the 104 K5K. So I'm going to take those, and there's supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 of them. Okay. So I can take those and I can write it down. And I can write it right on there.
Slide it over a little to the middle.
Okay. All right. Well,
you could have done it on the paper.
I could have done it on the paper.
Yep.
Okay.
I think I got the paper on.
I'm going to put the board out of the way.
Go. Perfect.
So I'm going to write right on here the 104. Okay. And 0.1. And then I'll take another one here and I'll flip it over, and I'll get my little magnifying glass out. 221. So this is actually 221. So that's a 220 picofarad capacitor. Okay. And I'll just go through these capacitors. And there's a magnifying glass. The 101.
Richie's radio room says the thing that we'll get to soon is build the smallest components or the shortest components.
We're gonna get there.
We're gonna get there.
Who is this? Rich?
Richie's radio room.
Richie's radio room. Okay.
His name's Zippy.
Zippy?
Yeah,
he's very he has a lot of knowledge about electronics. And,
yes, build the short stuff first.
Okay, this one here is a 560. So this is a 560. Now, when you're looking at those numbers, you can say, oh, that's 56 picofarad. There's 100 picofarad. There's 220. 220 happens to be, I'm sorry, that's a 221. But I put 200 on there. 221, and then I put 200, which is confusing because it's actually a 220 picofarad capacitor, but it reads 221 on the thing. So again, here is a 681. So 681. Okay, and 121. I'm not doing any. Again, I'm not looking for a part. I'm picking up a part and reading it in 101. Oh, 391. 391. So I have now, have I sorted and tried to search for anything? No, I just pick up a part, read the value. This is a 22 microfarad. So there are my caps.
Let me just mention real quick to you, Rex.
Yeah.
Guy by the name of Charlie Dawson, you may know him. He says, Rex is a great guy. We go to his LobsterCon ham camp.
Charlie Dawson?
Yes.
The entertainer?
It looks like he's got a guitar in his hand.
Where in the hell have you been?
He says he loves your camp gathering each summer in Maine, and
why hasn't he been for a couple of years? I've been worried about him.
I don't know. You'll have to put his update in the chat, maybe.
Charlie, send me an email, would you? Why? I mean, this year's the 25th anniversary. This is the 25th year I put on that party. Why? You got to be there, man.
You won't get the T-shirt if you don't go.
You won't get the T-shirt, or you won't have access to a T-shirt. You don't get one when you go because you got to pay for it. But just because of you, Charlie, not because of you, but I have reserved the the performance stage out at the front area. So I don't know what to do with it yet, but I've got it.
Pressure's on, Charlie. Pressure's on.
Charlie, you got to be there. Okay. All right. So we got the capacitors done. And so likewise, you can do the same thing for the resistors. Now I must admit, you should be able to read your resistor values if you're building kits. I've seen so many people who still have to put a resistor in a volt ohm meter to read it. Now I must admit,
there's actually a comment there on that one too, Rex. Justin says you might pass on to people who have trouble seeing color like me that you can use a ohm meter.
Well, the colors are not that great anymore.
That's what I was just starting to say. Now,
exactly.
Here is let me go my overhead shot. Overhead shot.
That is the overhead.
Oh,
shot.
that is overhead shot. Oh my God. So here's a box of various meters. Now you can see how dusty they are because I don't particularly use them because my eyes are still good. But there's a resistor, capacitor value. You turn it on, you put a part in there, and it will tell you what it is. There's another one just like it. Here's a RC meter. I hardly ever use that anymore. Another one. This is one of the first ones that came out, the Peak. And you take your three little things and you can tell exactly what a part is. So yeah, if you have problems seeing the colors because you've got color problems,
or that they've just printed them so
small, or that brown and orange and red all start looking the same because they're crappy resistors. Yeah. Then you got to worry about it.
Earl Stratman says, "Too bad about resistors. Red, green, colorblind."
Then you have to check them. Okay.
But one more comment here real quick. Okay. And that's Rich Rockman. I am dazed and confused because I opened my bag of parts for the first time along with you, and I have a lot less parts. Also, I'm not seeing any numbers with my magnifying glass. I'm inexperienced. That's what I say. Well, Rich, that's not good.
No, that's definitely not good. I should have known about that.
The numbers are sometimes very, very faded.
Yes.
And even with a magnifying glass, it's like hard to read sometimes.
Well, I tell you, certainly send me take a picture of what you've got for parts.
Yeah.
A nice close-up picture of it and send it to me, and I will get parts out. We're not building this kit tonight. Okay, we're building it on Wednesday. There's still a chance I can get you parts by Wednesday. But if not, we certainly will get you parts.
And there is a bill of materials online, right?
Right.
You've got there on the site the bill of materials.
Right. You should be able to actually, coordinate exactly what you've got. Now, I did put there's 3 batches of kits in there because there's the stuff for the 3 little test pieces of test stuff. Those came in separate bags. So there should be 3 bags inside the big bag. And if you didn't get that, we got a problem. Okay. Now, I didn't kit these myself. I paid someone to kit them up, and she was very good. And I got a big box of them, and I randomly sampled them, and they all look good to me. So I do have 2 people, I think, commented they didn't get this strip right here of capacitors.
But you should be able to at least go through and separate out the resistors, capacitors, and add up how many of each.
Yeah, and in fact, on the bill of materials, it actually shows you how many of each type of thing is in there. So
and the colors.
Okay, so I'm going to do. This is the 220 ohm. So I'm going to go do these. Now, here's the problem with capacitors. Are nice because they got this little horseshoe shape and they stay put. In essence, if you don't move around, but resistors will roll all over the place. So the first thing you want to do is, in the case of the Tuna Tin 2 40th anniversary, you notice all resistors are at 4/10 of an inch. So the first thing you can do is take your lead bender, if you've got one, and bend them. And now that thing will not roll all over the place. So I'm gonna bend them all. And you notice that by doing everything you're doing in a group mode, it just goes faster. So I'm just bending these off, and it might take you, 10 minutes to prep.
A little bit further up.
Okay. Well, all right.
So
okay.
there
I'm bending these
Yep.
guys, and I'm putting them in a pile down below because I'm not even looking at them now. I'm just bending. I'm a bending fool. Okay. So now I've got them all bent. And there's the first one I bent was a 220, and I can see this one is a brown, black, brown. So this is 100. Now here's the other thing.
And we talked about that before. The green ones are the inductors, right?
Yes, the green,
Yep.
the ones that have got green bodies are inductors.
Yep.
You can get. No, I don't think you can get resistors with green bodies. I'm not aware of any resistors with green bodies. Here's something now. If you got color blindness, that green, that's a green, blue,
Purple.
black. Green, blue, black. Okay. Now, if you can't see green, well, you got a problem because I don't know what green looks like to someone who can't read green. Does it look like black? I don't know. But if you've got a problem with reading them, then you got a 56 ohm 5. This green blue is 56. Okay, so that's a 56 ohm resistor. If that thing looks weird and you can't look it on your list, then if you look at your bill of materials, you got a 56, which you're gonna have problems with. Okay, this one is gray, red, red. So this is 8.2K. This is yellow, violet, orange. That's 47K.
You can actually see those over the video, Charlie.
So here's
Yeah,
yellow.
I can.
There's a yellow, violet, red, which is 4.7K.
I was worried it wasn't coming through good enough. I guess
And this one is a brown, black, red, which is 1K. Okay. And how many resistors am I supposed to have? Okay, we're having an orientation problem.
Okay.
I don't know where to put it. Okay, here
Here's
we go.
the overhead shot.
Here's the overhead shot. So I got all my capacitors and all my resistors. I could probably do the inductors too. I'll put them down here somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, I can. I got room.
Those are the green
So this
ones.
is the 5711. No, I'm sorry, 5818.
Let's see what that looks like.
Earl Straddleman
Okay.
asks, is there a shape distinction between resistors and inductors?
Not
If
much.
you look at the inductor, a choke. Okay, let's see. Get this
Yep.
close up.
Yep. You're moving. You keep
Well,
moving it
if
off.
you get
There
out of the way, I can
Yep.
see.
Nope. Stop moving it. Nope,
Okay.
Yep.
I'm looking at the screen, but I can't see it through your shoulder.
Yep.
Okay. So if you look at this thing here, it looks like the body of a wasp. See how it has a big hourglass figure? That's what a choke looks like.
Pop a resistor up there in the same spot.
Here's the same spot. The resistor is pretty much as smooth all the way through because it's a composition that's made much different. Where the choke is a bunch of wire with two end caps on it. The wire is skinny, so you get this hourglass figure. Okay, and it's typically a green body, or sometimes you can find a blue body or a brown body, depending. I don't think I actually called out what the color is because it depends on what I got in my inventory. But they will read slightly different because there's not typically, here's a brown, black, gold. Okay. And so that basically is a 1 microhenry, brown, black, gold. Here is
somebody has a more modern mnemonic. Big boys race our young girls, but Violet generally wins.
Oh, well,
that's much better than what I learned.
Much better than what I learned too.
Yes.
Okay.
Big boys race our young girls, but Violet generally wins. Thank you, Richie Rich. I'm going to have to remember that.
I guess they're running around in race cars, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one is much better than what I learned.
All right. So here's a red, black, which happens to be a 22 microhenry. And now I'm going to bend these, and I do believe they're all at 0.4 also. Yes. So I'll run this.
So one thing that I do that you probably do too, but you just haven't here, is I'll tape scotch tape these so that they don't move out of place.
Well, generally what I do is I have a little pick. Okay. Where's my
you want the close-up camera?
There it's right there.
Way close.
Right there. I have a little pick. And what I do is on my paper, I'll usually have a piece of black static foam behind it. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I'll just poke 2 little holes in there, and I'll stick it right through into the black static foam, and it stands up right next to it and won't move, and I can move it from house to house.
And I suppose if you have a flower arranger in your house, you could make off with some of that green foam stuff.
Yeah, that green foam stuff doesn't stick very nicely with parts. You have a tendency to bend leads on that. Yeah. Okay, so here's your 2 1 microhenry, and I got 1 inductor left. I'm going to cut the little pieces of tape off of it.
One L. Not sure how to pronounce that. Said he or she got a Harbor Freight multimeter. Unfortunately, it seems the free multimeters I've gotten from Harbor Freight tend to have very bad probes.
Yes,
but you can usually get those free. The multimeters from
Well, I haven't seen good free coupons from them for a long time.
Yeah, but they do every once in a while have them free, and the multimeter itself is fine.
So,
that's one right there. Except mine, the probes keep breaking.
Give me the top one.
Yeah.
But because they are free, I use this small aside story. I used to have, for 2 years, I took my daughter into town every Thursday night for chorus, and the rehearsal was 2 hours long. And rather than stay hanging around the building, I'd take off, and 5 minutes later I'd be at Harbor Freight. And I was the man who I knew every flyer, that every coupon that came out. And when they had a free multimeter, I was over there picking up the multimeter. One year I did a Buildathon at Dayton, and everybody who participated in the Buildathon got a free Harbor Freight meter to read their resistor values. I think I gave away like 50 meters that year. Here's another little. This is another little one I got as a. I got this one as a freebie when I ordered like $50 worth of stuff from some company. I don't know what it is. It could have been Electronic Gold Mine or Marlon P. Jones. And here's one I got from. This is my #1 meter. It's a really nice meter, and I've been using this for years. I got this when I ordered. I think this is a $50 meter, and I ordered $100 worth of stuff from a company, and I got this meter for free. And it's been a good meter all these years. So yeah, if you need a meter, everybody should have a meter, and it should be a decent meter, not a Harbor Freight. I throw Harbor Freights in the side pocket of my car because if they break, I don't care. I would not do that with a good meter.
So Ed says he has 2 oblong pieces taped together. He thinks they are identical and contain a gold and silver band. Are they inductors or chokes? If they're taped together, then the chokes are taped together.
Okay.
They were, right? Didn't
Right
they come
there.
in
Gold and silver, but that's on one end. Flip it over and look at it, and it's brown black, gold, silver. Let's see. Which one am I looking at? There it is, right there. Yeah, I think I cut those off the tape.
You might be just looking at it the wrong way around.
Yeah. Flip it over. If I'm looking at it this way, I see silver, gold, black, brown. If I turn it over right there, I got brown, black, gold, silver.
And if I remember, when you took that apart, those 2 chokes were on.
They were,
tape.
Those are 1 microhenries.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And that's why there's 2 of them. That's in the low pass filter.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point is, I didn't search for any parts. I picked up parts, took the value, wrote it down, put it in a spot on my little kitting sorting sheet. And so now I've got, I'll just add the 2 transistors. I've got everything I need to build this kit. All organized, all pretty much staying put. Now, I wouldn't do this, 2 days before I build it. I'd do this, when I'm going to build it. Because I have to transport this home now because I'm not going to build it tonight. But the idea is now when I go to build this, okay, I can either go buy the part and immediately pick it up or take the part and find exactly where it goes. It's quicker to go by the board and pick up the part because the parts are identified. So in this case, the way I always build a kit, always, is I start with the things that are closest to the board. And that's what the recommendation was from who?
Rich's Radio Room.
Rich's Radio Room. Yes, Rich. You got it. You build the shortest things on the board, which typically means resistors. Then you put inductors down. Then you might put capacitors. And then you go with taller because as you take the iron in, you don't want things to get in your way. So you build all the low buildings first. Then you take the high rises last because, you got to go through the canyons of, imagine trying to put a, 1 garage apartment in a whole row of 50-story buildings. It's not very good. So what I do is, again, by sorting these parts once, writing them down, getting the values, I can now go and do the circuit. And I don't care if it's a resistor, a choke, or a diode. If it's flat, I can just pick it up. Well, I forgot to take my Schottky diode and bend that.
And you're doing all that off camera.
I'm doing it all off camera. I am so sorry. Okay, now it's there. Bent like it's supposed to be. So I can start and go all the way down the circuit and just pick up the flat stuff, knowing that I'm going to use a diode, a choke, or a resistor. And I can, I have it. I know exactly what it is. And I say, 5818. I pick it up and I put it in.
Oh, hang on. Let's do that on the close-up camera.
Okay. I put it in.
Wait.
Work it down. And spread the parts out, leads out a little bit, and there it is. That's ready to go. Now, I could set this down and solder it and cut the leads off and do another one. Okay, that's slow. So the idea is do another one. Now, you could do one right next to it, which I don't recommend. Okay, you can pick one that's further away. I'll do the 47K. So I know exactly where the 47K is. There it is right there. I can put the 47K in. Okay. Bend it over, flip the leads. Okay. Then I can do the next one. Go further away. Go to the 100 ohm.
And we're going to do that on Wednesday.
We're going to do that on Wednesday.
So
okay.
Too far ahead here.
Okay. But what I'm showing you is the fact that by taking parts, you go on the board and you see what the part is. You know exactly where it is on your kitting sorting sheet. And you pick parts that are far enough away that when you go to solder, they're not in the way of each other. Okay. And that way you can put 5 or 6 parts down and solder them up, clip them off, and you're working 5 times faster. Now, it's not speed, it's just efficient. Okay. It's efficient that you're not doing one part at a time, but you're still being accurate and know exactly what parts are going where. Okay, so I'll take them apart. I'll put this 100 back where the 100 goes. I'll put this 4.47K. I'll put this thing back where the...
And that's where we'll pick up with your parts sorted like this.
Yeah, I'll take the same sheet and on Wednesday we'll build it.
Scotch tape for you, or we can put it somewhere.
No, I'll have something else. Okay. Now, here's the other thing. If it's a tuna can kit that you're building, one of your homework assignments was to find a tuna can to put it on. Okay. Now, show of hands, how many people bought a tuna fish can for tonight? Don't really need one.
I have chicken breast.
Okay, chicken breast. I have lots of Dole pineapple because that's my daughter's a vegetarian. That's the one thing I count on her eating is pineapple. She loves pineapple. So I got lots of pineapple cans in my larder. So, but the idea is when you put the part on here, okay, let's go back to a 200 and let's go back to, just for the hell of it, 100 ohms.
Let's try to get you on.
Okay. I'm going to put my 100 ohms. Now, here's one thing about a tuna can kit is the fact that I sell these nice little gizmos. These are, whoops, hold on a second.
Jan says, be aware by prepping the RCA connector pin. She says, they say this, might be a him, sorry. They say the central one is too thick for the hole in the PCB. Let me tuned with the side cutter. So
yes,
could be.
Yeah, I can see that's a little bit on the small side. They were supposed to be the same size. Okay, that's a change. That's a change from the old connectors to the new ones. That's
anyway, continue on.
Okay, so I sell these little circuit board holders, and what I can do is I can just take 3 of these guys and crank them on the board anywhere. I'm going to do a 120 degrees out of phase, so it's like a tripod. So when I put the parts on, when I sit this board down to solder, it's up off the board, yet not too up off the table, not too high, and I can get in there, and I basically I'm holding my palms on the table when I'm soldering. Okay, we there? But here's the other thing, because this is a tuna can kit, the tuna can makes a very nice holder. So I'll take those off. This is my cell phone holder on my bench. I just took a board and I made a racking leaning thing so I can put my cell phone in and hold it. It's also a coin bank, but it's a tuna fish can, so I can put that down. And if I put this right on the top, I can sit there and I can use it to hold the board totally flat. All the parts. The only thing it won't do is once you start putting connectors on the edge where you've got stuff that sticks out, you can't stick it back on the top because they're going to get in the way. But all the stuff inside you can do with that board. Now the problem is, sometimes it might get a little difficult to pull it back off. So what you can do is you can put your bolt on it like this. So when you put it on there, you can just grab it and you pull it off, do your clippings and put some more parts on and do the same thing. So a tuna can makes a really good circuit board holder. Certainly better than some of those big giant things that rotate all over the place. I hate them. I hate them. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do for Wednesday. Yep. We're going to build this sucker. Okay, so right now I'm going to take all these parts and
don't do this to your parts.
I'm putting them back in the bag.
You lost one up there.
Yep, that's it. Okay. It's nice to have someone looking over my shoulder. Okay, so there are my parts back in the bag. So parts ID and sorting, we've got that done. What time is it now? We've got
6:30.
we 2 hours into it, so we better
Yeah.
quicken the pace a little bit, huh? People, I'm gonna wear people out. Anybody worn out yet? Have I lost anybody? Anybody?
I think it's great.
Okay.
You're doing good.
All right. So let's take a look at the other. I think I've already pulled them out of here. Damn it.
Yeah, just me again. Just me. What is your name, by the way? Put that in the chat. Unless you want to continue to be called just me. But he says, yeah, he clipped his for the so they'd fit. And he must be talking about the.
And if you're missing a part, just send Rex an email.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
straight away.
I'll get some out tomorrow morning. I'll mail parts out to anybody who's got them. Whether or not they get there, I don't know. If they're close enough, that's okay. Apparently, I thought I had grabbed.
What are you looking for? Tell me.
Well, I was looking for the full bag of parts for the
RF probe.
RF probe and the thing. But see, I cannibalized one of the bags for the RF probe so that I could build an RF probe, which is what we have here. Okay. Okay, so now hopefully everybody's got this is a me squares board. Okay. And the idea about me squares, you can build anything you want on it. And in the case of an RF probe, you can make it's very nice for making a small RF probe. And so unfortunately, I don't have a second set of parts because I just built this probe to make a picture of it, to put on the website. And apparently it was the only, hold on a second. There's the capacitor. There's the probe.
So that capacitor looks quite a bit different. Could you slow down lower the
Yeah.
probe down a little bit? Yeah.
Okay, that right there is getting out my little magnifier, and you look on it, and it says
So something in very small.
very small letters. I got 74-year-old eyes. It says 103. K. Okay. 103K. So the 103 is 0.01 microfarad. Okay. The K is part of the, it's, I don't know if it's the temperature range, the precision range, or this happens to be 100. This is a 100-volt capacitor. Yeah. K1R. So this is a 0.01 100-volt capacitor. And so that capacitor goes in the RF probe right there. Okay. You see it? And apparently,
You can't see through my head?
Huh?
You can't see through my head?
I can't see through his head. He's blocking my monitor over there. Probably should have put it way off to one side, but then when I look at it, I'd be looking strange-eyed. Okay. So the idea about this probe is the fact that you got a capacitor, this 0.01. You got a small resistor, which is a 4.3 megohm, and you've got a Schottky diode. In this case, a 5711. And I'm gonna move all this stuff off screen for a minute. And the way an RF probe works is you have a probe, then you have a capacitor, 0.01, then you have a resistor, 4.3 megohm, and then you have a diode to ground, and then you have this ground with an alligator clip. So you probe, your clip goes to ground on your circuit, and then on the output of this, and this goes to your plus and your voltmeter, and this goes to the ground on your minus voltmeter. Okay. It's a real simple circuit. And the idea is, again, 0.01. What was the value of that? When it comes to RF, it was roughly 2 ohms, 2.2 ohms. Because a 0.1 was 0.22. This is not quite as good, so this is a 2.2. Okay, so your RF, that no DC comes into this capacitor. Okay, so no DC comes in. The RF piles up in here. This thing here keeps it from going down to ground, so it keeps it from shorting out. So it goes to the 4.3 and out to the voltmeter. And this voltmeter typically has a 10 mega ohm or a 11 mega ohm circuit. Okay, impedance inside the voltmeter. So now you got a 4.3 and a 10 meg in a voltage divider. So you're getting, and the way that works is the fact that you're getting a 0.707. 10 over 14. 10 over 14 is
0.714.
0.714. Close enough. Okay. So yeah, so basically 0.707, that's basically the square root of 2. Right. And that sort of gives you, I think that's what RMS.
Yeah, root mean. Yeah.
Okay, root mean square.
Yep.
Okay, so that's RMS RF voltage. If you had a capacitor in there and let it build up, if you had another capacitor, then you could get actual peak-to-peak voltage.
So can you put the RF probe on top of that drawing and show the components?
Yeah. So here's the RF probe. Okay. So in the case of, let me get my Sharpie out. Let's see. Will this point very well?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my.
Big, but
Huh?
Go ahead. Go for it. No, it's not your fault. I can't zoom in with that camera.
Okay. All right. So here's the probe coming in to the capacitor. Now what I did was I put the probe, I soldered it across two pads here. So it's shorting across 2 pads. And let me do that.
That might be.
Here's, whoops,
I don't know if it shows it any
I already made this thing. Why did I do that? I cut them all off already. Okay. So in this case, you notice that what you get in the kit was a rectangular board. Why does that look like it's ass backwards?
It might be.
It is ass backwards.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay. It's mirrored or something. So it's square. And what I did was I took my handy dandy little guillotine cutters, which I absolutely love. Okay. And what I did was I took it all the way down to the base and I cut one at 45-degree angle. Okay. And it won't cut all the way through because of that FR fiberglass. But what I did was I just like that. So now it's just a little pointy. It's a little bit better for getting in that 45-degree angle. See that? Okay, by cutting that little corner off. And
yeah, see now with it flipped this way so that it looks right to you, all the numbers are backwards.
right. Well, why did it get flipped?
No, with it flipped, it looks backwards. Well, no, it's because of the mirror image thing, but anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to go like
Let me
that.
Switch it back the other way. It's going to look weird to you. Don't look at it.
Okay, I'm not going to look at that. I'll look at what I'm doing, and that's it. I won't
look at what you're doing.
I'll look at what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my solder.
Oh, I thought we were just going to go through the one you already made.
Nope. I'm going to take my solder. I'm going to show you how to make one. Okay, it's real simple. So I'm going to take these first two pads. I'm going to put a lump of solder on there like that. Okay, so then that got nice little domes on them. I'll take my little probe piece of bus wire, and I'm going to put it in my pliers that have a rubber band on the handle, so it acts like a little vise. Okay. I'll bring in my little tuna can, and I'll just lay them. Let's see, which way do I got to go? I got to go this way. There we go. Okay. So I got them. I got the wire held in my pliers with my rubber band, and I'm going to go up here. Yeah, and I'll just put a little bit of solder on this probe. Okay, so I'm basically tinning it. And then I'm going to move that up there. And then I'm going to move it all the way on the board. And I'm going to go and I'm going to plunk that down. So there it is. Okay, whoops. Oh, okay. Geez, you didn't keep me honest there.
Yeah.
I thought I was good. Okay. So there now, I'll go back down to the thing. Okay. So I'm back down on the board level now. So now I can take the capacitor and I'm going to pick I like to make sure that each part has its own pad. So I'm going to actually go 2 pads over. Okay. And oops. Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah. I see. Rats. See, I used the cutoff, but this one now is cut off. But that's okay. I can still work with it. Sorry about that. I used up my spare piece. So I'll go this way. So I'm going to mash the leads down so it sits kind of on those pads, and I'm going to double up on that RF probe. And the reason I like to use a separate pad is because I know that if I go to solder this probe and capacitor together, the probe's still going to stay put over on this other side. So because, okay, let's go back to tinning that guy. All right, I'm going to turn it upside down because now I'm going to work right-handed. So I know that I can solder this thing right here without the probe coming off because it's held down by another part. So now I can mush that down onto that pad. And I can do the same thing over here. Okay, so that capacitor is now in there. I can go all the way over to the next one, shorting those 2 pads together, which is okay. I will cut this guy off. Okay. Now, if I had a damn resistor, which I apparently don't have another one of those stupid resistors because I already built
Must the Tuna Tin itself be connected to ground pads on the PCB? The tuna can?
Don't have to. It is connected through the bolt. Because if you look at the top of the board, there's actually a pad on the bolt.
That's not on screen.
Okay. That's not on screen.
Okay, now it is.
Well, actually, that's not.
No.
No, it's not.
That doesn't need to be.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, it's out in the open. It's radiating. Shorting the can is only going to make it not radiate down below because there's a ground plane there, but it's radiating everywhere, which is sometimes kind of handy because when the minute you turn it on, you can hear it in the receiver next door.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to pretend as though I've got another resistor, which I do not have. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I used it up when I pre-built this one to take a picture and put it on the web. And I used, guess what? I'll unuse this resistor, which is pretty easy to do. Okay. Okay, pretend you didn't see that.
It was mostly off camera anyway.
It was mostly off camera. Okay, so I'm gonna fix up my resistor leads a little bit because I took this back off that. That's the nice thing about me-square's construction is the fact that because you've got these nice pads, you can solder and unsolder stuff pretty easy. So now there's a little blob of solder here I don't like. So I've now cleaned up this resistor, so you can't really tell that it's been used before. It's just now been tinned. So I can go over here and put it right down on the second pad that the capacitor is on, and I can hit that. and it's soldered because it was tin. The pad is tinned, and I can go over on the back side and solder that one down. So there's 3 of the 4 elements. So now I got my diode, which again, I don't have a second diode. Crud. Crud. Bear with me. I'm off camera again. I'm off camera. Sorry about that. Try not to burn myself. I'm working off camera. Almost there. Okay, I got it. Okay, slightly bent up. Slightly bent up, but I'll fix that.
So I guess this is homework, right? We need to do this before Wednesday.
No, actually, we don't really need this until you've got a built kit that doesn't work, or you got a built kit you want to investigate.
I see.
Okay. This was the whole idea about this one, is the fact that it's something we could build if we had time to build something. If someone wanted to build along, we weren't going to be building a Tuna Tin. We're going to just build something simple. And this RF probe is no practice, but we don't have any real newbies here. So here I'm going to put this diode down.
Oh, there were some newbies.
10 minutes. People are dropping like flies. Oh my God. Okay. We'll get this thing built. Okay. There's that. Okay. Well, we did say it was, we had a couple of hours. Where's my solder? Solder. Okay. We're getting there. Okay. So there are the 3 real RF probe components. I took a alligator clip, okay, soldered it to the coated wire, and I soldered that to the bottom of the diode. That's the ground clip when you're RF probing. And then I've got a piece of twisted wire, which is a pseudo coax kind of, okay, and I'll put that to the white to the resistor, the positive side, black to the ground. Okay, and I stripped and tinned the ends, and in this case I let one end run. This is the positive end. I run it a lot longer than the negative, so that when you go to put alligator clips to your meter or something, for instance, in this case, if I alligator clip this to my voltometer leads, by having that distance between them, it keeps those 2 alligator clips from coming in contact. And then the other end can go to my meter, and now I can put this to a ground on your thing and probe around and read the voltages, the RF voltages on the kit. And that's it. One last thing. This ties into the very start of this whole thing, which is the final thing on my list of things to talk about, is YQRP. Now, I used to have, my very first radio I bought was a Swan 700 CRX. 700 watts of raw off power. And I was afraid always to turn it on and transmit because everybody told me, oh my God, the tubes in that thing were so expensive and hard to find that if you blow them up by not having it tuned properly, you're out of business. I said, oh crap. So I listened to it a lot, but I never ever transmitted on that thing because I was so afraid to tune it up. I didn't have the equipment. 700 watts, you need a big giant dummy load to tune that sucker up. Well, in QRP, in a Tuna Tin 2, well, there's a dummy load right there. That's a 49.9 ohm non-inductive resistor, very precision, 1 watt. So plugged on just to the terminals of a RCA jack or a plug, and I can put that and screw that thing right back on there. And there's a 1 watt dummy load for QRP. And I can just plug that sucker right into the RCA transmitter out, and you got an RF load. Now, in the kit is also, here's a 51 ohm, 3 watt non-inductive resistor. So this actually would be good for, you could actually use it as a 5 watt dummy load. But you don't want to put it on for a long time because it will heat up. But it is 3 watts, so that's okay. But the problem with that one is the fact that it has a hard time fitting inside, coming around and fitting inside the actual hole. You have to, if you made it onto a jack, it pretty much is going to be out in the open unless you coat it with something. So
Air cooled.
Yeah, air cooled. There you go. Okay, you put a little fan on top of it, and then you get 5 watts. Okay, that's all I want to talk about. I hope I didn't bore anybody to tears. I know people left. Okay, I'm fine with that. So Wednesday? No, that's still wrong.
8 p.m.
8 p.m. Oh, 8 p.m. Yes, we're going to start at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
I got
that means it's 6 o'clock Arizona time for you Arizonians, and 5 o'clock for California. So they can actually get out of work maybe a couple minutes early and still be here. Okay, doesn't have to be. And then following Sunday, it will be 5 o'clock again, at 3 o'clock Arizona time for you, Charlie.
Yep.
Not being snotty or anything. I never know. Arizona and Indiana, is it Indiana? I think has really weird time zones. So sometimes certain places are. I don't want to be on Central Time. I don't want to be on Eastern Time. So you never know certain places. But Wednesday we're going to build a kit, and from start to finish, we'll sort the parts again and build it, and soldering technique, tips, that kind of thing. It won't take that long, a couple hours maybe, tops. Okay. We don't have any real newbies. Oh, sorry. I'm talking to my computer. Sorry about that. So, we'll take as long as it takes, but I don't think it's going to take that long. And you should come with your parts sorted. Now that you see how to do it, you should have your parts sorted on a sheet so you can commence to build without having to do any futzing around. Futzing takes time. Okay. And then on Sunday, we'll probably, if anybody's got a problem with their kit, we'll learn how to use the tools. We'll do some RF probing. We'll get an oscilloscope out and show the RF signals and how they move around the circuit. And we'll take questions and answers and have a blab session, and then that's it. I hope it's worth it. The price of admission was pretty low. We got some neat stuff, and you have some real. The RF probe is the #1 tool that anybody who builds a QRP kit needs is an RF probe. So you can find all kinds of problems with your kit, and I might even show. I might even have a kit with a problem that we can demonstrate how we can see what's wrong, and find it real fast with an RF probe. So that's about it for tonight, I guess. Anybody got any closing remarks that they want to make with us?
Yeah, I have one thing I wanted to address, but go ahead, Steven. It sounds like you do too.
Nope, I got nothing.
He's got nothing.
Okay. All right. I just put this up here then. So there was a question. I don't think it'll be a problem now, but there was some people who mentioned that they had a hard time finding the video or the link to the video to the live stream. And so what we'll be trying to do, so just for those of you who had a hard time last time, or maybe are watching this for the first time and need to figure out where the links are, at the top of Rex's page here, you can just see it's listed. It's right there. It's live right now. The same for my YouTube channel. Same thing. Right at the top, you'll see the link. So this is the one. This has a big 1 right here. This is the first episode. After we're done today, then there'll be a 2 there, and that will be where you just look at the same thing here, and you'll be able to see. So it won't be a problem.
I'll make sure that. I mean, I thought I was pretty clear about. You go to my Rex Harper YouTube page, and you can go to the live streams, and it will be there. When it goes live.
Yep.
I'll make sure I'll notify everybody again where the links are, and hopefully we can have a link up before it gets really curtain time. Okay. Any other comments? Anybody that we still have remaining? How many people we got remaining?
There's about 30 right now. I just want to thank everybody for joining, and it was an enjoyable talk there, Rex. I really learned some good stuff, and looking forward to Wednesday.
Okay, well, we're going to build, and hopefully, it should go fairly quickly. So we won't have to go in the late into the night or anything like that. Once you see that sorting your parts and maybe pre-bending them, that kind of thing, that takes really a lot of time out of building a kit. You'll be much more satisfied when you build a kit after you've done your homework.
I put an extra picture of you in the background.
An extra picture. Oh, look at that guy back there.
Infinite Rex.
So anyway, I appreciate everybody. This is my first attempt at actually creating a Buildathon on my own without being linked into anybody else. And hopefully we'll get the kinks worked out. We'll do it again in a few months. We'll have another one.
Yeah,
I might. I don't know what it will be, but come March, I'll probably do another one. I like them. I like educating people. I like, I like getting feedback. And the whole idea about tonight was supposedly the fact that we're talking back and forth. We got a couple of different moderators here, and that if you got a question, we're here to answer this stuff. We're here to get you up and running in QRP kit building. No topic is it's not specific to this kit. It's building in general. Okay.
Yeah. Hey guys. Steve and Rex, stick around after. Let me just spin down the live stream, and we'll stick around if you can. So, all right, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday.